spend less money than you make. That is the key to all financial wisdom. Without that, you do not have anything but a good idea. You'll notice that rich people actually put art back in the art basket area, collection area. You don't just leave litter all around. And we're here to tell you one more time that the way you do little things is how you do big things. Last time I looked, hardly any real estate agents or brokers are homeless. Most of them don't hitchhike to their listing to get there. Most of you have cars. Most of you have homes. I'm betting you pay for those on a monthly basis. You can do the same thing with saving on a regular basis, paying yourself first, honest to God. You can do the same thing with giving to charities on a regular basis. You set it up just like an ordinary bill.
Hey, Masters, welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. Today, we are with Mr. John Checki. John, what's up, sir?
Good afternoon, David, and thanks so much for the privilege of being interviewed by you. And let's go ahead and give a big shout out to David to start, letting you remind yourselves, go to his podcast website and pick the brains of the best people on earth. And they were kind enough to let me in the open window.
Well, I appreciate that intro. Thank you, sir. Yeah, and now you're going to add to that list of the, the brains there. So, man, and it's funny.
At the very least, what we're going to do is add a bit of humor, because basically, what we try and help folks do is, one, make it all about you, just like Joel talked about. Two, address the most interesting and curious subject matter that husbands and wives normally get into together. And it is not sex. Sex is just a subset of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. It's all about, I hate to tell you, the money.
Yeah,
the money is just a subset of relationship to determine, honest to God, what your spending habits are, what your saving habits are. And I've got a brief outline for you that I've worked on for years, having picked the best minds on earth. And our defining moment came because my dad used to work for a guy that got to testify before the Kefauver committee, because Uncle Willie to me was actually Willie Moretti, who was the muscle of the Colombo gang in New York. And my dad worked for him in the gambling joints. So my father's income went from what was a lot of money back then, $250 a week, to $50 a week as a welder. So he went from a guy wearing suits to a guy wearing a blue, and he was one bitter guy. So from the age of about 3 or 4, I quickly learned that, Johnny, you're going to have to learn all there is to know about money, because your dad is just basically, I use a New Jersey term, pissed off, and does a lot more complaining. But he was there, he was loving, so was my mom. But they lived through the Depression. They were determined to help us live through the Depression without being depressed at the same time. So we learned the secret of the universe. And for those of you like taking notes, I'm begging you to write this down. Spend less money than you make. That is the key to all financial wisdom. Without that, you do not have anything but a good idea. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's brilliant, man. Yeah, I mean, so if you're making 900,000 and spend 875,
you would be fascinated how often we have had the privilege of talking to people who make more than that on an annual basis. And we've looked at their returns and discovered that they had much better scrapbooks than you do, much neater cars than you do. And I'm like most egomaniacs, drive a really nice car after saving up for it for 45 years. But number 2 point is, a lot of those people don't have any money. A lot of those people, they go to renew their dues, say, gee, I wish I had the $25,000 to re-up, but I'm just kind of short on cash. And you think, how can that possibly be? Well, you can look at their clothes, $1,000 belt, and a pair of pants that cost a couple of $1,000, and a jacket that I can't even quote how much that cost. And you go, gee, that's fun. Not habit forming. Point number 2, know who you are, what you like and what you don't like. That sounds simplistic, but let's expand on that for a moment. There are certain things in life that suck the life out of you when you just think of it. Never mind have to go do it. For
Mm.
most husbands, it's throwing out the trash, even though their wife cannot imagine why the husband thinks he's not supposed to throw out the trash. So what most fathers do is we teach our kids how to do that just as quick as humanly possible and bribe them with minimum bribes. But find out what it is you love to do. Point number three, try this. If you're really depressed, smile, look up at the ceiling and take a big deep breath. It is impossible to be depressed, smiling, staring at the ceiling. If you got a window like we do, floor to ceiling, you can look out and see the wonderful fall, not fall now, it's spring foliage coming back. One day at Canyon Creek Estates, it looked like God flipped a switch and wham, the brown went to green, which is the way God meant for trees to look. In point number three, subset and very important, write this down too, please. Discover, develop, and deploy your talents.
Mm.
Now, God played a big joke on some of us who loved to play basketball, but stopped our growth at age 16 and height 5'6". It's a sad but personal story. Gave us a lot of discipline. We learned how to shoot with either hand. We learned how to steal the ball from people, how to punch a basketball and the like. But we're not going to get to be a Boston Celtic. Therefore, we could stop wasting time playing team sports and concentrate on what was important, studying, picking people's brains. Come to point number four. I hate to tell you how much money I spent on coaching last year, but it's more than the average family of four makes in a year. And I'm 73, financially independent, and have a really good business that pays me a lot more money than we spend. Going back to point number one. So why do we still get coached? And my wife asks me this question every year. She says, John, you're smart enough. Why aren't you coaching other people, for God's sake? Number one, thanks to the miracle of Zoom, that might actually happen. Number two, I don't really enjoy going to Arizona for 3 days, California for 3 days, Boston for a couple of days, Ontario or Chicago for 3 days. And each one of those organizations meets about 4 times a year. So I missed my wife's birthday 2 years in a row, which she did not find that entertaining. But seek good counselors and coaches. Almost everybody you know that's any good at anything has coaches
Mm.
and keeps quoting coaches and keeps working out with coaches and keeps getting counseled by coaches and studies more coaches and watches YouTube, podcasts, and all kinds of stuff. And you'll think to yourself, why do they work that hard? Well, kids, there's a big difference between people who can and people who wish. It goes back to one word only, grit, and then morphs right into action. Without action, you're just a boring, talkative person. Sorry, you can write your congressman for his apology on that one. If you can, marry well. I think David's been lucky enough to do that. For those of us who've been married and divorced, married and widowed and married, it's a bad hobby to have. It's like taking the square root of your assets. I don't recommend it, but life goes on. When you go to the beach, try not to get sand in your sandals. Another thing that rich people do all the time is when you go to the supermarket, you'll notice that rich people actually put the cart back in the cart basket area, collection area. We don't just leave litter all around. And we're here to tell you one more time that the way you do little things is how you do big things, which is
Mm.
why back in olden days when people loved to play golf a lot and kept score accurately, they learned to trust or not hire somebody based on their demeanor and how they conducted themselves on a golf course. Now it's true in restaurants. When some charm school dropout goes to a restaurant and is rude to the staff, you do not want to be around that person because the only reason that person is nice to you is they're looking to pick your pocket in a civilized sort of way.
Mm.
And I hope you get to just listen to that rather than experience it. And feel free to share your stories on it. But again, marry well if you can. If you can't make the best of it, that you can. Highly recommend 5 languages of love that make love last. And this afternoon, we're going to recommend that to a guy who's right in the middle of one of those situations. But giving to charities. I know this sounds kind of odd when it talks about how to have fun and still have money. But you're going to find the best way to feel better about yourselves and ourselves is to write your favorite church or charity a check. And it's not my word that you need to take. There are any number of books on this subject about giving makes you feel better. Why is that? Well, giving is something that people who are secure in the amount of assets and income they generate do because they're not worried about not having enough money. You'll
Mm,
notice I just raised my voice. Sorry. Because people who are scared of not having enough money are praying for what they don't want to have. Another helpful hint, which I did not bother to put it on the list, is think about what you actually want out of life and start with each and every dinkin' day. Now, I'm guessing David has the same habit that some of us do of getting up in the morning first thing and exercising a bit, meditating a bit, writing what you want the day to be like, praising the Lord for the amazing opportunities that He gives us, the talents that He gave us to actually pursue the things that we had in mind. And not all of us can grow up to be a boxing champion like David. Some of us have actually fought in black belt tournaments and boxed in the army during the Vietnam War, which makes you incredibly confident because when someone gives you some lip, you go, we can dance, but you're not going to enjoy the steps. And in my case, since my grandparents were kind enough to come over from Southern Italy, all I have to ever say to somebody is, and I am Italian, Southern
mm.
Italian. Everybody gets that joke. I'm married to a gorgeous woman, and we get to meet all the leches in the room wherever we go, plus the girls who want to exchange makeup tips. And my wife has learned to take that basically person who wants to get to know her better by the elbow, turn that person in my direction and say, and here's my Italian husband. So it's great fun in terms of that stuff. But give
All
to
right.
charities, do it on a regular basis. And some of you are in the real estate business or the real estate profession, and you say, John, I can't do that. I don't have steady income. Last time I looked, hardly any real estate agents or brokers are homeless. Most of them don't hitchhike to their listings to get there. Most of you have cars. Most of you have homes. I'm betting you pay for those on a monthly basis. You can do the same thing with saving on a regular basis, paying yourself first, honest to God. You can do the same thing with giving to charities on a regular basis, and you set it up just like an ordinary bill that you just do day in and day out and make it automatic, just like you do breathing. You too can actually feel a lot better about yourself. Now, be aware of this. I had exactly one client in the last 32 years who gave so much money to his church that the church would call us and ask us if we had okayed this deduction. Do not try to buy your way into heaven. It's very clearly stated that there are no tickets for sale to heaven. You just simply, in our case, we believe that Jesus saves and the rest of us have to learn to invest. Now, compliance assures me I'm not authorized to say Jesus saves and the rest of us have to learn to invest. But if you look at the long-term trends, our saving clients are going to have to learn how to fish because if you just invest in certain low yielding assets, you will not have enough money to not work, which is why every time you see an advertisement for a fixed annuity back in olden days, you see a picture of people fishing. And the joke has always been they have to fish. They're fishing for their dinner, but that's another story. I'm a big fan of exercising regularly because last time I looked, my head was attached to the rest of my body. And the better my body works, the better my head works. And I don't enjoy being stupid. I suggest eating healthy. And the sad part that I discovered when I was looking into longevity was it's just as important to visit with people at the gym as it is to be working out at the gym. I thought, oh no, for those of us who enjoy going to the gym, working out like a crazy person, not talking to anybody except saying, excuse me, if we bump into somebody, miss the boat. We're supposed to say, hi, how are you? How are your kids? Have you gotten your second COVID shot yet? How did you respond to them? And that sort of thing. Most importantly, we all need love. So the only way I know to give love or get love is to give love first. Much like Joe Polish tells us, life gives to the giver. What does that mean in everyday language in this short, happy podcast? Generous people have a tendency to attract other people because people realize that we are not looking to pick somebody's pocket or get something over on folks. We're loving, kind people, but not foolish. Think of all the time David spends giving you free content on a regular basis just like Joe Polish, just like myself, and a lot of other people, including Mike Burnoff and Joel Weldon. I've known Joe Weldon and have him as a coach for the last several years. And I really love talking to him, especially on the phone. He is so very funny and a loving person. Another helpful hint, point number 8, is enjoy your day. Let's translate that into English. I bet you know somebody who every day it's like watching a staged drama. They either break a nail or they lose an earring or something along those lines, or the guy runs out of gas halfway to his best friend's wedding. So enjoy your day. The one of the coaches in the Dallas Cowboys years ago came up with a phrase that I really like called the 5 P's. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Do not confuse that with those of us who practice throwing a baseball and never learned how to throw a baseball properly, never learned to hold their arm like this instead of like this. My son had to get somebody to coach him who actually knew how to throw a baseball so he can actually properly do that. So, yes, practice regularly, but find somebody to teach you properly how to do it. And our home office always says, John, be sure and tell people all your disclosures are on your website, checkifinancial.com. It tells you through whom we offer securities and the like. Plus, we have a lot of tools on that website. We love circles in terms of what we do. So we like to get to know you, assess your needs, build your custom strategy, and implement and monitor. That's a lot like what y'all do when you help people find a home of their dreams, get them in the home of their dreams. And when somebody comes to you with brain damage and would like to buy $1 million house and $100,000 worth of income, you have to ask them if they have a rich uncle that's going to pay the rest of that money for them. No
Mhm.
kidding. Just had met with a real estate agent who was kind enough to sell us our house. He's also a neighbor. And we both went over the horrors of what y'all are going through right now in terms of there are about 150 buyers for every 37 houses available. So it's more like a bidding war. So congratulations, kids, now being auctioneers, auctioneering off houses. David, what helpful hints can you give to my clients in terms of what they're doing and trying to find their new homes?
What helpful hints can I give to your client? Yeah,
You
great
being in
question.
that
Well,
business coach.
yeah, this has probably been one of my easiest interviews I've ever had. It's thank you. Um, well, first off, let me just back up a little bit, we'll just so people even know who we're talking to. You're John Checki. You're a native of New Jersey, longtime resident of Texas, with a story worth living and hearing. Black belt in Taekwondo, which you kind of mentioned. You boxed in the U.S. Army. Husband, father, grandfather, longtime inventor, or is that investor? I'm sorry, my
I'm
glasses are
glad you
fogged.
corrected that because I'm definitely not an inventor. One other thing I
Yes.
did that most people are really impressed with, when I was a widower in 1999, a friend of mine suggested I go to stand-up comedy
Yeah.
school. And I went to stand-up comedy school and learned how to write jokes, which is great therapy because basically everything that happens to you is a setup for a punchline. Also performed stand-up comedy at the Addison Improv, several clubs in Houston, clubs in Austin as well, and for several benefits as well. It is the hardest thing to do on earth. It is easier to fight in a black belt tournament than it is to go, here's Johnny. Be handed a
Yeah.
microphone and trying to make a bunch of half drunk people who are trying to figure out who they're going to sleep with tonight laugh.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I did stand up once. I did it at a dinner banquet. I was challenged to do it. I did a 10-minute slot and I actually killed it. It was
Wow.
amazing. Yeah, it was awesome. It was one of the coolest things I've done.
Hopefully you
Yeah.
had a video of that. I'll tell you a funny
No,
story.
of course there's no video to prove
Oh,
it, but yeah, it was good. It was like
I have
300
some videos.
people.
I actually have some
Yeah.
videos of me doing that in kidding because I was one of the
Yeah.
teachers. But let me
Let,
help you on another
let,
sad. Go
well,
ahead.
let me go back to the question you asked.
Yeah,
Well, there's a couple things I want to chat with you
good.
about. So, number one is well, here's an interesting question. What kind of car do you have? You said you saved up 40 years to get a nice car, or
I bought a 3-year-old S550 Mercedes-Benz Cabriolet, which is a lovely car. It had about 11,000 miles on it. Thankfully, I'd taken 2 courses on how to hack a luxury car and how to negotiate
Mm,
a course with our mutual acquaintance who teaches us how to never split the difference. And I got it for wholesale by accident by just weeding them out. Put 20% down, paid it off in 4 months because I just hate payments. I'm just no good with payments. Just, but literally, you can save up for things on a regular basis. And I have a special account saving up
so
for a car.
so the interesting thing is I'm sure you could buy that car 10 times over if you wanted to for cash, but yet you bought
I,
a
I,
3-year-old
yeah, I did
version,
it. I did
right?
it. I'll tell you why I didn't buy a new one. In 2014, I was going to buy an SL 550 for only $120,000. Unbelievably, for some reason, known only to God, I had that much money in my checking account. I have no idea that happened, but it did. And then I thought, being John, I'm going to go see what the depreciation on that thing is. And it went down about
Yeah.
$20,000 a year. So literally in 3 years, you can buy one of those for half price.
Mm,
So
that's a
that's
good
why
point.
it's a fantastic point. And when you
Yeah.
have a Mercedes Benz or a Lexus or any number of amazing cars that last a long time, if you maintain them, let somebody else take that big hit of depreciation. Give me one more helpful hint on finances, then I really want to hear David answer that question about finding a house. A lot of
Uh,
dealerships have demonstrator cars. A lot of times you can get those cars for a very reasonable amount of money and they're very well maintained. But again,
so
house hunting, David, give us some helpful hints on how to hunt for a house in these modern times.
yeah, I mean, we're at a place right now where it's the lowest inventory I think we've probably ever experienced. Most realtors in their lifetime, and certainly me being in the business 18 years. So, um, it's first off, it's having the right agent. Because you're not always going to find it on the market. Most times, you're not going to find it on the MLS. It's going to be come from either somebody they know, somebody in a network, maybe they're calling into a neighborhood. So I think having the right agent, an agent that has relationships with other agents, because what we're seeing now is like no time before. You're seeing a lot of off market, off MLS transactions happen. So yeah, I think that having the right agent is going to be the critical first step. And then, if and one of the challenges we're experiencing, John, is a lot of people do want to sell because supply and demand, right? Supply and demand is
Sure.
like there's no there's no inventory, so it's through the roof, but yet they can't buy anything, right? So it's like you don't want to sell and be homeless. So I think that's another thing that's causing the shortage of inventory. So having an agent that's really good at helping you with both sides, as well as some options. We're having some clients sometimes, either they're willing to sell high, rent for a year or two,
Mhm.
have their stuff in storage, and then I mean, it can't just continue going up. I mean, I'd love to hear your thought on that, but um, yeah, or lease option. We've got some people that are willing to buy the house, lease it back to the owners for 3 or 6 months while they're looking for another property.
The big horror that we have right now, and I learned this from my favorite barber. Yeah, um, he has been a barber for God bless America, James Russell Jr. for 40 years, so he gets to talk to everybody in Plano. Plano's doing all kinds of stuff. An awful lot of people are not paying their mortgage. An awful lot of people have lost their jobs, lost their income, and
Mm,
eventually lost their retirement savings. So his theory is in another 6 months, there's going to be a lot more inventory available thanks to the miracle known as foreclosures. And you might find somebody who's a mortgage banker to fill you in on that, because I think that's going to be a frightfully interesting development and subject. I talked to my wife about not the foreclosure part, but the gee, darling, this is a peak time in terms of selling the house. My wife has been after me to sell the house ever since we bought the house, because we bought it for about $84 a square foot. Now it's got up to $155 a square foot. So that's a nice chunk. Oh boy, you can find a house for $250,000, I think, on Mars at this point in time. Because just yesterday I looked up for my son who wants to buy a house. And the first houses that popped up were $4.4 billion in Plano. And I thought, I would love to see a $4.5 million house in Plano, Texas, for God's sake. but that's another story. But I could hardly find a house for $250,000 that looked like somebody's outhouse as opposed to something you would actually want your grandchildren to live in at this time.
Hmm.
So a lot of people were just building houses, and sadly, in this neighborhood, which is shouldn't be that expensive, it's hard to find a house that's new that costs less than $400,000.
Yeah, that's true. But I agree. I think I think it's going to be a little further than 6 months. But you're right. There's a forbearance in place right now, which is ending soon. So there are a lot of challenges. There's a lot of people that own investment properties that have tenants in it that aren't paying rent. So there's definitely some stuff coming. May take a little bit longer than 6 months.
What I suggested to
But
my son, who has promised his kids he's going to buy them a house by August, which makes my head shake, and I just can't keep it still when he said that,
mm,
is talk to people in your church, talk to people who have investment real estate, or some nice old folks who just want to retire and go to the place where everybody seems to get COVID, that is a retirement village. And just, I guess he's going to have to go knock on doors and go network to find
yeah.
a house, or he's going to disappoint his kids and not have a place for them to live that's new to them, along with his wife, in August.
So I've got a couple more questions for you, John, and we're gonna start wrapping up soon.
Okay,
Um, Number one is well, you mentioned multiple times a coach. Well, you know what? If like I think most of our listeners, well, what would your quick answer be on why is a coach so important?
coach can see your blind spots. That's point number one. If you have a coach like David that actually is in the real estate profession and is still actually active. One of my least favorite examples are people who did some very unique things and then they coach on it for the rest of their lives, or worse, people are really great motivational speakers. So to evaluate a coach, I'm a very big fan, just like Michael Burnoff talks about all the time, about being coached by people actually still doing it.
Yeah.
I'm happy that most baseball managers and basketball coaches can still play basketball. But if I am talking to somebody about a profession where old age is just a sign of wisdom, I want that person to still be involved in it and then be somebody that I want to be like when I grow up. And saying that at 73 is pretty comedic. What I like mostly about high level coaching people is when you get in behind those closed doors, which you will discover someday when Genius Network once again has in-person meetings in mass, not just a little bit. A lot of folks, after a couple of drinks, will talk about what's really going on in their lives as opposed to the
Mm,
fantasy island version that they like to give to everybody. So it lets you know, one, a lot of highfalutin people have the same trouble as you do. Number two, they have perspective. I'll tell you what we do mostly. I'm 73 and I've been doing this for 32 years in terms of financial advice, and I've been a CPA since 1976. Yeah, when the country was only 200 years old. So I'm sure there's a story I have not heard yet, but I'm looking forward to actually hearing one I have not heard before. So most of us have actually helped people through the situation that you're facing. Point number three, when you talk to a business coach that's actually not just coached businesses, but actually built real businesses and is still building real businesses, and you go to their brick and mortar establishment and see what their business really is and talk to their employees about what kind of a coconut that person really is, that's the kind of person you want to hire.
mm,
That's the person you want to hire. I'm saying that again. No, it's find somebody that's still involved in what you want to do. And third or fourth point on that is this: find someone who fits your personality. If you're kind of a out there type person, find somebody who can help you perfect that style and tone down that style. If you're talking to Mr. Mortimer, that's just kind of quiet, shy, what have you, you better be that way too, because that person's not really going to understand why on earth you were so passionate about anything, if that makes any sense. So get a
yes.
match, just like dating.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Something you said to me on not this past meeting, but the one prior. We were in a small group together, and you had shared that you may remember the conversation. I certainly do. That you said that what you asked a question. I believe it was, what do all the highest or the wealthiest people on the planet have in common? Do you remember that?
Wealthiest people on earth
The
have
wealthiest or the highest. I forget. I'm paraphrasing. It may be the highest. income earners? What do they all have in common with each other?
Last time I looked, they
Maybe
all,
maybe I just imagined the question, but
the
you
most
know
common
you
characteristic that I recall in terms of that is one, they talk to each other a lot. They hang out together a lot. There aren't that many of them, therefore they have to hang out with people who understand why it's tough getting your
that's
amazing
another
jet
good point.
surfaced. It's tough getting your amazing jet resurfaced and talking to your third wife, or whatever that is. Why don't you tell me what the conversation
Well,
was?
you had said that they all know their numbers, is
Oh
what
yeah,
you
now
said.
that, yeah, and to underscore that, I was at. You remember when there was a walk on Wall Street, where there was a big demonstration on Wall Street, and you had to walk through all kinds of security to get to the New York Stock Exchange about 5 years ago. Unbelievably, I had a coaching situation that I had to go to that was right in that building where those people were blocking. No kidding. And I have the ID, so they let me through the checkpoints. And it was an entrepreneur's bash where some guys and gals who were taking their businesses to $1 billion each, and they were off in the Midwest. So there no left coast, no right coast, Midwest, everyone. Every single time someone asked a question and quoted a number, even the nicest of them corrected the person about the numbers. Why was that? Because they had the ones from this morning. Because they're constantly checking their numbers. One of the telltale signs whenever I talk to somebody that owns a business. So where's your lost leader? And where's your honeypot? Where do you actually make your money? And when I get that dough in the hairlines, like I'm thinking, I'm sorry. Apparently you have a great cash flow hobby that we're talking about. We need to find out exactly what is and what ain't. It's like a guy was pitching an investment me the other day with no documentation. I said, let me ask you every investor's favorite question. How long before I get my money back? That's what I want to know. How long before I don't want
Yeah.
to send somebody with a baseball bat to go see you. I just want to know in plain English, what's the payback on this? And that's not a trick question. That's what every angel on earth wants to know. Have you not found that the case with investors?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
But
it's
knowing your
investment.
numbers, when you sit down with a prospect, you're talking about $1 million house versus a $200,000 house. You better spend 5 times as much time with the $1 million house. Otherwise, your husband or wife's going to slap you on the side of the head and wonder why you have brain damage. So know where your big money is. Now, we all have sympathy for folks that are always a day late and a dollar short, but unless you're a missionary or Mother Teresa taking up a collection, you better be able to support your family to a style to which you wish your parents had supported you when you were a little kid. And last point I'm going to make and underscore this is stop giving your kids what you wish people gave you and start teaching them the things you wish people taught you when you were a little kid.
Good
I'm going to
advice.
say that again. Stop spoiling your kids with stuff and give them the information you wish people had given you if you were lucky enough to get that. And I was, because I found every smart person I could find from the time I was 5 years old, took walks with him. And back then it was okay for a little kid to walk with an old person because there weren't so many molesters out there. But I picked a lot of brains my whole life, and just like you, David, I'm still doing it. Who knew that you were
Well,
a boxing champion?
yeah, well, it's an interesting story, man. I'm a champ only because I have one professional fight and I won, so I'm undefeated.
I didn't know they wore headgear in professional fights. That was news to me.
You didn't know what?
They wear headgear.
Yeah, so it was a sanctioned fight on cable TV, but you're right, maybe yeah, amateur professional, I guess, right?
Okay,
Is what
okay,
yeah.
I
All
understand
right,
that.
yeah.
And
But
now,
yeah, yeah. So
yeah, be
it's
sure and edit that part out. No one needs to hear that.
it's
Now,
hey, I'll leave it in. It's all good, man. It's all good. I'm fine. Um, all right. So well, first off, how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in getting in touch with you?
our number is 972-437-4089. The easiest thing to do is look up John Checki. You look up John Checki in Amazon, you'll see a couple of books that we've written. And there are not many Checki first name John people out there. And here's what we always say to people, no kidding. That is, if you're having one of those days and you need to talk to somebody that's kind of uplifting and will always leave you with a smile, we are happy to have you as our stand-up comedy audience when we talk to you. But here's the underlying story. You'll not only be entertained, more importantly, you'll get some education. Because we are very helpful to point out the blind spots. And every single person on this podcast in this podcast, listen to this podcast, whether it's live or replay, as a special God given gift that was given to you so that you can fulfill your destiny that God had for you in mind. So don't complain about being short like I do all the time, or being smart alecky, or not having enough hair to go ahead and comb in the middle. Whatever it is God had designed for you is exactly who you're supposed to be. So discover your talents, develop your talents, and look us up at checkifinancial.com if you need some more information or are tired of being not having fun and not having any money.
Yeah, that's going to be my final question, man, is how do you continue to have fun and have money at the
Oh,
same
it's as
time?
simple as it can possibly be. Number one, if you are content with being the amazing person that you are, David, do you find that people are very good at selling you stuff you don't want? No.
Nobody sells me anything I don't want.
Correct. And I tell people that all the time. I said, rich people are a little bit different than the rest of you. I buy a lot of stuff, God knows, but nobody ever sells me anything, period. Not even that I don't want, but they don't sell me anything. Now, the guy that wrote Persuasion and Persuasion, Cialdini, said that Boy Scout and his dad knocked on Cialdini's off door, and it totally positioned him out to, he didn't want to do anything until he said a little Boy Scout. And it just completely moved his heart, and he bought a lot more stuff than he had planned on doing because of position. So if you real estate agents have a way of endearing yourself to your clients, your customers, and your network, go ahead and bring out your cookies or whatever talent you have. My son bakes lots of stuff by nature, just loves doing that. And we have him bake stuff and give that away all the time. All I do is give away gift coupons to ice cream places because you don't want to bake, you don't want to eat my cakes, but you would enjoy my pasta sauce. So it's checkifinancial.com. We'd love to chat with you. And I'm telling you guys, if you're in the real estate area and you want some coaching, you want to get better at it, see David. Just see David. And more importantly than that, hire David. Seeing him is nice. Complimenting him is wonderful. Writing him a check is something his wife would like you to do.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. And yeah, if you want to get your finances in order, talk to Mr. Checki. Thank you.